Lena had always been the kind of person who preferred to stay in the background. She didn't talk much during meetings, didn't try to outshine anyone, and didn't gossip like most of her co-workers. She believed that good work spoke for itself. But sometimes silence can make people believe you are weak, and that's exactly what happened to her. It was a bright Monday morning, the kind of day where the whole office buzzed with excitement. The company was preparing for a huge presentation, one that could secure a deal with a major client. Everyone had been working on it for weeks, especially Lena. She had spent countless late nights perfecting the design layout, the event plan, and every small detail. She believed that if this presentation went well, it would finally be her chance to prove herself. By 10 a.m., the meeting room was packed. The long glass table gleamed under the lights, and the air smelled of fresh coffee and expensive perfume. The team stood around nervously, waiting for the client to arrive. Lena sat near the end of the table, her laptop open, hands slightly trembling. She had rehearsed her part again and again. This was her moment, or at least she hoped it would be. When the client arrived, everyone straightened up. Smiles, handshakes, polite small talk. The boss began the introduction, talking about how hard the team had worked. Then he looked at Lena and said, "And now our junior event planner has some creative ideas to share." He said it in a tone that sounded polite but distant. As if he didn't expect much, Lena stood up, took a deep breath, and started her presentation. Her voice was calm, a little shaky at first, but as she continued, she grew more confident. She talked about the color themes, the flow of the event, the guest experience, and how small touches could make it memorable. The client nodded with interest. Everything seemed to be going well, until one of her senior colleagues, Dan, interrupted her. "Wait," he said, laughing lightly. "You mean you actually think the client wants that?" "This isn't a school project, Lena." A few people chuckled. Lena froze for a second, her hand still holding the clicker. She tried to respond calmly. "Actually, I based this on the feedback they gave us during the last meeting." But before she could finish, Dan spoke again. "Feedback is one thing, but we can't risk looking unprofessional. No offense, but maybe we should let someone with more experience handle the creative direction." His words hung in the air. The client looked uncomfortable, glancing between them. Lena's boss forced a smile, trying to smooth things over. "Let's move on," he said quickly. "Dan, why don't you show your version?" Lena sat down slowly, her face burning. Her hands shook as she closed her laptop. Around her, people avoided eye contact. Some pretended to focus on their notes. Others whispered quietly. It wasn't the first time someone had dismissed her ideas, but this time it happened in front of the client. In front of everyone. The humiliation cut deep. Dan took over the presentation, showing slides that looked polished but generic. The client nodded politely, but their enthusiasm seemed to fade. Lena could feel it. She had lost their attention, and so had the team. The energy in the room shifted. What had started as exciting now felt tense and awkward. As soon as the meeting ended, people began to pack up quickly, eager to escape the heavy silence. Lena gathered her things slowly, avoiding everyone's eyes. Her boss gave her a quick pat on the shoulder and said, "Don't take it personally, okay? It's part of the job." Then he walked away, leaving her alone. Lena stepped outside the conference room and walked down the long hallway toward her desk. Every step felt heavier than the last. Her mind kept replaying Dan's words, the laughter, the looks. She had worked so hard, and it all ended in embarrassment. She sat down at her desk, opened her email, and tried to look busy, but her eyes were blurry. She could barely see the screen. Around her, co-workers whispered in low voices. She caught a few words. Awkward. Presentation. Dan was harsh. She pretended not to hear, but each word felt like another tiny cut. She took a deep breath and told herself to stay calm. Crying at work would only make things worse. A few minutes later, Dan walked by her desk. He gave a small smirk and said, "Nothing personal, okay? Just business." Then he walked away as if he had done nothing wrong. Lena clenched her hands into fists under the table but said nothing. She had always believed that staying calm was better than reacting, but right now calmness felt like weakness. When the clock hit noon, Lena decided she couldn't sit there any longer. She grabbed her bag and stepped outside for some air. The city was noisy, cars honking, people rushing by, the usual lunchtime chaos. She found a quiet corner near a small cafe and sat on a bench. Her phone buzzed with messages from coworkers, but she ignored them. She looked up at the sky and tried to breathe. It was strange. The world kept moving even when she felt stuck. For a moment, she wondered if maybe this was a sign she didn't belong there. Maybe she wasn't meant to be part of a team that didn't value her. But then she remembered why she started in the first place. She loved creating moments that made people feel something. That's what drew her to event planning. It wasn't about titles or praise. It was about impact. As she sat there, she scrolled through her contacts absent-mindedly. Then her thumb stopped on a name she hadn't thought about in months. Mr. Patel. He was the investor she had helped during a previous event disaster. That night, when everything went wrong, she had stepped up, stayed calm, and fixed the problem while everyone else panicked. Afterward, he had thanked her personally and said, "If you ever need help, call me." She had smiled then, not thinking much of it. But now, sitting alone on that bench, those words echoed in her mind. She hesitated. Calling him felt risky. What would she even say? That her team disrespected her? That she was humiliated in front of a client? It sounded childish. She didn't want pity. But something inside her said this wasn't about revenge or sympathy. It was about being heard. About standing up for herself in her own quiet way. Lena stared at the contact for a long moment. Then she took a deep breath and pressed call. Her heart raced as the phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Then a familiar voice answered warmly. "Lena, it's been a while. How are you?" Hearing his friendly tone made her feel a little steadier. "I'm fine," she said softly. "I just needed some advice." They talked for several minutes. She didn't complain or blame anyone. She just explained what had happened honestly and calmly. She told him how much she had worked for this project, how her ideas were dismissed publicly, and how she felt invisible in a place she gave everything to. There was a pause on the other end, then he said, "Lena, I remember the way you handled that last event. You have something many people don't. Integrity. Leave this with me. I'll take care of it." She thanked him and hung up, not sure what he meant. But for the first time that day, she felt lighter. Maybe nothing would come of it, but just making that call reminded her that she wasn't powerless. Sometimes the smallest actions can change the biggest things. She went back to the office that afternoon. The moment she stepped inside, she could feel eyes on her again, curious, judgmental. She kept her head high and went straight to her desk. She opened her laptop and started working as if nothing had happened. When Dan passed by again, he gave her a short nod, maybe out of guilt or maybe just to act polite. She didn't react inside, though. Lena felt something shift. She wasn't angry anymore. She was focused. She realized that respect couldn't be demanded through words or arguments. It had to be earned through quiet strength. What she didn't know yet was that the call she made during lunch would soon change everything. Not just her role in the company, but how everyone saw her. That night, when she finally got home, she sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. Her mind replayed the day's events, but instead of shame, she felt calm. Maybe life had a strange way of balancing things, humiliations turning into opportunities and silence turning into power. For the first time in a long while, she smiled to herself. She didn't know what would happen next, but she had a feeling that this was only the beginning. The next morning, Lena woke up before sunrise. She hadn't slept much, but her mind was strangely calm. The memory of the previous day was still heavy, but something inside her had shifted. She had done something brave, something she never thought she would do. She had spoken up, even if it was in her own quiet way. She made a cup of tea and sat by the window. The city outside was slowly waking up. Cars began to move, shop signs flickered to life, and people hurried down the sidewalks. For the first time in a while, she didn't feel like she was falling behind. She felt steady, as if the world had finally slowed down enough for her to catch her breath. By the time she reached the office, things felt different. People were moving quickly, talking in hushed tones, and the usual morning laughter was missing. Something was going on. Lena set her bag down and turned on her computer. Before she could even log in, her boss's assistant appeared beside her desk. "The boss wants to see you," she said quietly. Lena looked up, surprised. "Right now?" "Yes," he said immediately. Her heart began to race. She followed the assistant down the hallway. The door to the boss's office was half open, and inside she could see her boss pacing back and forth, phone in hand. He hung up the call when he saw her and gestured for her to come in. "Sit down," he said, his voice firm but uneasy. Lena sat, unsure of what to expect. "I just got a call from the client," he began. "Apparently they had a conversation this morning with someone named Mr. Patel. You remember him?" Her stomach tightened. "Yes," she said softly. Her boss raised an eyebrow. "You spoke to him?" Lena nodded. "Yesterday after the meeting. I told him what happened. I didn't mean to cause trouble." He held up a hand, stopping her. "Well, trouble is exactly what you caused, but somehow it's working in your favor." He sighed and leaned back in his chair. "The client told me that Mr. Patel spoke very highly of you. He said you're the reason his last event went so well, and he insisted that you lead the upcoming project personally. He doesn't want anyone else managing it. Not me, not Dan, just you." Lena blinked, unsure if she heard him right. "He said that?" "Yes," her boss said. "He was quite clear about it. He even mentioned he'll be visiting the office later this week to discuss it in person." For a long moment, Lena couldn't speak. It was as if all the noise in the world had faded away, leaving only her heartbeat. She had expected nothing from that call. Maybe a few kind words, maybe a bit of advice, but not this. Her boss cleared his throat. "Look, Lena," he said, softening his tone. "I know what happened yesterday was unprofessional. I spoke to Dan about it, but the client's request changes things. I want you to prepare a revised plan. Make sure everything's perfect this time." She nodded slowly. "I will." When she walked out of the office, everyone's eyes followed her. The same people who had watched her humiliation yesterday were now whispering again. But this time, their tones were different. Some looked curious, others uneasy. Word spreads fast in an office, and within an hour everyone knew. The client had specifically asked for Lena. Dan avoided her the entire morning. Usually he strutted around with confidence, cracking jokes and giving orders. But now he kept his head down, typing at his desk, pretending to be busy. It was strange to see him quiet. By noon, Lena was deep in work. She poured herself into the project, redesigning everything from the theme to the layout. She didn't want revenge or praise. She just wanted the event to be something she could be proud of. As she worked, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from an unknown number. "Proud of you for handling things the right way. Don't let anyone dim your light." Pishi smiled when she saw the initial. It was Mr. Patel. The message was short, but it gave her strength. Someone out there had seen her worth when others had not. That afternoon, when her boss called for a team meeting, the energy in the room was different. Everyone seemed careful with their words, watching Lena as if she had suddenly become someone important. The boss spoke about the client's satisfaction and how the company had to deliver their best work. Then, in front of everyone, he turned to her and said, "Lena, you'll be leading the creative side from now on. Coordinate with the client directly. Let's make this our best event yet." There was a short silence. Then a few people murmured congratulations. Lena gave a polite smile and thanked him. But inside she felt a mix of emotion, gratitude, disbelief, and something else she hadn't felt in a long time, confidence. When the meeting ended, she started gathering her papers, and that's when Dan walked over. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "About yesterday, I might have gone too far. I didn't mean to embarrass you. It's okay," she said quickly. "Let's just focus on the work." He nodded, clearly relieved, and walked away. But as Lena watched him go, she realized something important. She didn't need an apology. What mattered wasn't what he said, but how she handled it. Over the next few days, Lena worked tirelessly. She met with vendors, restructured plans, and communicated directly with the client. The more she worked, the more confident she became. People who once ignored her now came to her for input. Even the boss started checking in with her regularly, something he had never done before. It wasn't about ego. It was about growth. For the first time, Lena wasn't hiding behind anyone. She was leading, and it felt right. One evening, as she was packing up to leave, her phone rang again. It was Mr. Patel. "I just wanted to check in," he said cheerfully. "How's everything going?" "Better than I expected," Lena admitted with a small laugh. "I think people are still surprised." "They should be," he said. "You're good at what you do, Lena. Don't ever let small minds make you doubt that." His words warmed her heart. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I don't know what to say." "Just promise me one thing," he replied. "When you're running your own company someday, remember how this felt, and treat people better than they treated you." Lena smiled. "I will." After the call, she sat there for a few minutes, staring at the city lights outside her window. She thought about everything that had happened in just 2 days. How quickly things could turn around when you decide not to stay silent. But she also knew that success came with pressure. Now all eyes were on her. The same people who once laughed at her mistakes were now waiting to see if she would fail. It didn't scare her. It motivated her. As the days turned into a week, preparations for the event went into full swing. Every small decision went through her. She found herself giving instructions, approving designs, even training interns. It felt strange at first, but then it started to feel natural. She had earned this. One afternoon, as the team reviewed the final designs, the client joined the call. They praised Lena's new concept, saying it was fresh, thoughtful, and exactly what we wanted. The whole team clapped. Lena smiled politely, but inside she felt something deep, a quiet pride. After the meeting ended, her boss walked over to her desk. "Good job," he said simply. "Keep this up and you'll go far." It wasn't a big compliment, but coming from him, it meant a lot. That night, as she walked home under the soft glow of the streetlights, Lena thought about how one phone call had changed so much. Not just her position at work, but how she saw herself. She realized that strength isn't about shouting or proving others wrong. It's about standing firm when the world tries to push you down. When she reached her apartment, she made a cup of tea and sat quietly. She thought about the people who still doubted her, and for once she didn't feel the need to convince them. She knew that time would speak louder than words. As she looked out at the night sky, she whispered softly to herself, "This is only the beginning." And she meant it. The next few days at the office felt like a dream Lena didn't want to wake up from. For the first time since she had joined the company, people were treating her differently. Not as the quiet assistant who stayed late to fix other people's mistakes, but as someone whose opinion actually mattered. It was a strange, unfamiliar feeling, but a good one. Every morning she arrived early before most of the team. The quiet office always helped her think better. She'd make herself a cup of coffee, sit by her desk and plan out the day, who to meet, what to review, what to approve. Her calendar was full, but she didn't complain. Work had always been her escape, and now it was also her stage. By midweek, the project had turned into a company-wide effort. Everyone wanted to be part of it since the client had become one of their biggest accounts. The same people who had laughed during her first presentation were now volunteering to help her. They sent her drafts, design samples, and suggestions, hoping to impress her. It felt strange at first. Some part of her still wanted to shrink away, to let others take over like before. But then she reminded herself she had earned this. She wasn't being handed anything. She had worked for it. And she wasn't going to let fear steal this chance from her. Her boss started checking in with her more often now. "The client's really happy," he told her one morning. "They said the new plan feels more creative, more human. Keep it up." She nodded, hiding a small smile. Meanwhile, Dan's attitude had changed completely. He still worked on the project, but now he spoke to her with careful respect. Sometimes he even asked her opinion, which was something she never thought she'd see. One afternoon, as the team reviewed the final mock-ups, Dan leaned over and said quietly, "You were right about the theme colors. I didn't see it before, but they actually work better than what I suggested." Lena looked at him surprised. "Thank you," she said simply. He nodded, awkward but genuine. Maybe he was realizing what she had always known, that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you give. A few days later, the office buzzed with the news that the client and the investor would be visiting in person. Everyone wanted everything to look perfect. The decorations, the samples, even the flowers at reception. It was one of those days when even the smallest details felt important. Lena spent the morning reviewing the event layout one last time. She went through every item, from lighting angles to table placements, making sure nothing was overlooked. She wanted it flawless. When the elevator doors opened and the visitors arrived, the energy in the room changed immediately. The client walked in first, friendly and confident as always, followed by Mr. Patel, who greeted everyone with a warm smile. "Ah, there she is," Mr. Patel said when he spotted Lena. "The woman who saved my event and now saved yours too." Everyone laughed lightly and Lena felt her cheeks warm. Her boss introduced her formally this time, calling her the lead creative director for the project. Hearing that title still felt surreal. They all gathered in the meeting room where Lena presented her final design plan. Her voice was steady this time, not shaking, not unsure. She spoke clearly, explaining her choices and how every detail connected to the client's vision. When she finished, the room was quiet for a few seconds before the client clapped slowly. "This," he said, smiling, "is exactly what we wanted. Clean, elegant, and meaningful. You've done a fantastic job, Lena." Her boss joined in the applause, followed by the rest of the team. Even Dan smiled and nodded in approval. Mr. Patel leaned back in his chair, looking pleased. "I told you she had talent," he said proudly. "You just had to give her a chance to show it." Lena couldn't help but smile. "Thank you," she said softly. The rest of the meeting went smoothly. They discussed a few minor details, but everyone was happy with her work. When it ended, the client shook her hand and said, "We'll be relying on you to oversee everything at the venue next week." "I'll be there," she promised. As they left, her boss turned to her with a grin she had never seen before. "I have to admit," he said, "I didn't expect this outcome." "You really turned things around," Lena smiled. "I just wanted to make things right." "Well, you did more than that," he said. "You impressed people who don't impress easily." That evening, after everyone left, she stayed back in the office to finish some final notes. The room was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioner. She leaned back in her chair, letting out a long breath. For the first time in a long while, she felt proud. Not because people finally noticed her, but because she had stayed true to herself when it mattered most. She opened her laptop and wrote a message to Mr. Patel. "Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. I won't forget it." A few minutes later, his reply came through. "You don't owe me thanks. You earned this yourself." Remember that, his words made her smile. It was strange how one kind person could change the course of your life. The following week arrived faster than she expected. The event setup began early in the morning. The venue was a grand hall, filled with lights, elegant decorations, and rows of seats. As Lena walked through the space, giving final instructions to the crew, she couldn't help but think about that day in the office when everyone laughed at her. It felt like a lifetime ago. The client arrived in the afternoon for a final walkthrough. Everything looked perfect: the flowers, the sound, the stage, the tables. When he saw it all come together, he turned to her and said, "This is beautiful. Lena, you've outdone yourself." Her heart swelled with quiet pride. As the evening began and guests started arriving, Lena stood at the back of the hall watching everything unfold. The soft music played, the lights glowed just right, and every small detail matched her plan. She noticed her boss near the entrance, shaking hands and smiling, but every now and then, he'd glance her way with a nod, a small, wordless sign of respect. Later, when the main presentation began, the client went up on stage and gave a short speech. Near the end, he said something that made Lena freeze for a moment. "There's someone in this room who deserves special thanks," he said. When things were uncertain, she brought clarity. When people doubted, she kept believing in the work. "Lena, this success is yours." The crowd turned and applauded. Lena stood there caught off guard, her face warm and her eyes glistening. She hadn't expected that. She didn't like attention, but this felt different. It wasn't about fame. It was about being seen finally for the right reasons. After the event ended, people came up to her, congratulating her, thanking her. Even Dan approached with a smile that looked genuine this time. "You did great," he said. "Really, you deserve this." "Thank you," she replied softly. When everyone left and the venue grew quiet, Lena stayed for a while, just standing there in the soft glow of the lights. The empty hall felt peaceful. She walked slowly across the floor, running her hand over one of the tables she had arranged earlier. Everything was exactly how she had pictured it. Her phone buzzed again. It was a message from her boss. "You've made us proud today. I'll see you in the morning. We'll talk about what's next for you." Lena smiled at the screen. What's next? Those two words filled her with excitement and a little fear. Change was coming. She could feel it. She looked around the hall one last time before turning off the lights. As she stepped outside into the cool night air, she realized that the call she had made days ago had done more than change her career. It had changed her. She no longer doubted her voice. She no longer questioned her worth. She had learned something that she would carry with her forever. That even the quietest person in the room can make the loudest impact, not through anger or pride, but through patience, courage, and action. That night, as she drove home, the city lights shimmered through her windshield. She smiled to herself, knowing deep down that this was only the beginning of something much bigger. And for the first time in her life, she didn't just feel like she belonged, she knew she did. The days after the event felt almost surreal for Lena. People at the office were no longer indifferent or dismissive. Even the senior staff who had laughed at her ideas before were now coming to her for advice. It was strange, almost unbelievable to realize how quickly things could change when someone finally took notice of her capabilities. Lena didn't let it get to her head. She knew that attention could be fleeting, and she didn't want to rely on praise to measure her worth. Instead, she focused on her work, reviewing upcoming projects, refining proposals, and mentoring the interns who had just joined. She wanted to use the momentum from her recent success to make a lasting impact, not just enjoy the applause. That morning, her boss called for a team meeting. Usually such meetings were routine, but this time, there was a noticeable tension in the air. People were talking quietly before it began, glancing at Lena as if they were waiting to see what she would say or do. She smiled politely at them and took her usual seat, determined to stay calm and professional. Her boss began by congratulating the team for the success of the previous event. Then, without warning, he turned to Lena and said, "I want everyone to know that this project wouldn't have succeeded without Lena. She led it from start to finish, and her decisions made all the difference." The room went quiet for a moment. People who had once whispered behind her back were now sitting stiffly, trying not to look embarrassed. A few nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth they had ignored before. Lena didn't boast or gloat. She simply thanked her boss and focused on the details of the next project. Dan, who had been so critical of her before, approached her desk later that afternoon. I just want to say I respect the way you handled everything," he said. His tone was awkward but sincere. "I learned a lot watching you. I hope I can do the same in the future." "Thank you," Lena replied, smiling gently. "I'm glad we can move forward together." It was a small moment, but it meant a lot. Lena had never wanted to humiliate anyone, even those who had disrespected her. Instead, she wanted them to see that strength came from competence and calm, not confrontation. Over the next week, Lena immersed herself in the new project. She coordinated with vendors, finalized designs, and ensured that every detail matched the client's vision. She was constantly in motion, moving from meeting to meeting, answering emails and solving problems before anyone else noticed them. Every task she completed reminded her of how far she had come, from being overlooked to being relied upon. One afternoon, as she was walking through the office, she noticed a group of interns huddled together looking nervous. She approached them and asked, "Is everything okay?" One of them, a young woman named Anya, spoke up. "We're not sure if we're doing this right. We've never handled something this big before." Lena smiled warmly. "I understand. I felt the same way when I started. Here's what we'll do. I'll guide you through it step by step. You can learn as we go." The intern's eyes lit up. For the first time, they felt that someone cared about their growth and wasn't judging them. Lena realized that this was another part of leadership, giving others the support she wished she had received earlier in her career. Meanwhile, her colleagues who had once doubted her were beginning to show subtle changes. They sought her opinion before making decisions, and even her boss consulted her on matters beyond the project. Every small gesture reminded her that respect could be earned, not demanded. One afternoon, as she was reviewing a new design proposal, her phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Patel. "I'm proud of you. Keep leading with integrity, and doors will continue to open." Lena smiled, feeling a warm sense of reassurance. His words reminded her that the call she had made weeks ago wasn't just a turning point for her career. It had been a reminder that someone believed in her, even when she doubted herself. By the end of the week, the project was coming together beautifully. Lena scheduled a final review with the client. She wanted to ensure that everything met their expectations and that there were no last-minute surprises. During the meeting, the client complimented her work extensively. "Your attention to detail and the way you handled everything is impressive," they said. "I can see that you genuinely care about the experience we're creating." "That's rare," Lena nodded, grateful but composed. "Thank you. I wanted to make sure everything is exactly how you envisioned it." The client smiled. "You've exceeded our expectations." I'm confident that the event will be a huge success because of you." After the meeting, Lena returned to her office feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. It wasn't about praise or recognition. It was about knowing she had done her best and that her efforts had a real impact. Later that evening, she noticed Dan approaching again. This time he seemed more relaxed. "I wanted to apologize again for my behavior during the first presentation," he said. "I didn't understand the value of your ideas then, but I do now." Lena looked at him and smiled. "I appreciate that. It means a lot that you recognize it. Let's focus on moving forward." He nodded and walked away, leaving Lena with a sense of closure. It wasn't about winning or proving him wrong. It was about showing that professionalism and patience could change even the most skeptical minds. Over the next few days, Lena continued to lead the project with confidence. She worked closely with the team, mentoring them, solving problems, and making decisions that demonstrated her growing expertise. People who had once ignored her were now learning from her. It was a strange but rewarding feeling. The quietest person in the room had become the one everyone relied on. Her success didn't go unnoticed by the upper management either. A few days after the project review, her boss called her into his office. "Lena, I want to talk about your future here," he said. "The way you handled the last project was exceptional. I believe you have the potential to take on a much larger role in the company." Lena listened carefully. She had always worked hard, hoping for recognition, but she had never expected it to come this soon. "Thank you," she said humbly. "I want to continue growing and contributing." Her boss smiled. "I know you will. I want you to start preparing for a leadership position in the next big project. You'll be mentoring others, making key decisions, and guiding the team. It's a lot of responsibility, but I believe you're ready." For a moment, Lena felt overwhelmed. It was a huge step and the pressure was immense. But then she remembered the call she had made to Mr. Patel, the encouragement she had received, and the confidence she had gained. She realized she was ready for this challenge. "I'll do my best," she said firmly. Her boss nodded. "I know you will. I trust you." When she returned to her desk, Lena felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just leading a project, she was shaping her own path. Every late night, every moment of doubt, every instance where she had stayed calm instead of reacting had led to this. She took a deep breath and opened her calendar to plan the next steps. For the first time, she felt in complete control of her career. She could make decisions, guide others, and create the impact she had always dreamed of. That evening, as she left the office, Lena walked through the quiet streets, reflecting on everything that had happened. She thought about the day she had been humiliated, the call she had made, and the way her life had shifted in such a short time. She realized that respect and recognition didn't come from force or anger. They came from consistent effort, patience, and believing in oneself even when others doubted you. As she reached her apartment, she sent a quick message to the interns she had been mentoring. "Great work today. Keep learning, stay focused, and remember that your efforts will always show. I'm proud of you all." Almost immediately, replies started coming in. Messages of thanks, excitement, and appreciation. Lena smiled. It felt good to lift others up the way someone had lifted her. She made herself a cup of tea and sat by the window, looking at the city lights flickering in the distance. For the first time, she felt a sense of completeness. The journey from being ignored and underestimated to being respected and relied upon had taught her more than any success could. She thought about the people who had doubted her, the colleagues who had laughed, and even Dan. Instead of resentment, she felt calm. Their opinions no longer defined her. She had learned to value herself, and that made all the difference. As she sipped her tea, Lena knew that this was not the end. It was another beginning, a step toward bigger challenges, greater responsibilities, and the confidence to face whatever came next. She smiled to herself, knowing that she was finally ready for whatever the future held. And for the first time, she didn't just feel respected, she felt empowered. Weeks passed, and Lena's role at the company continued to grow. The project she had led had been a huge success, and everyone, from the client to her boss, recognized her contributions. But even with all the praise and acknowledgement, Lena stayed focused on the work itself. She wasn't interested in titles or recognition. What mattered to her was creating something meaningful, helping her team grow, and proving to herself that she could handle challenges without losing her calm or her dignity. Every morning she arrived early as usual and stayed late if needed. She coordinated meetings, reviewed plans, and checked on every detail. Yet, unlike before, her workload no longer felt like a burden. She felt capable, in control, and confident. She knew her efforts had value, and that knowledge fueled her drive. One morning, her boss called her into the office. Lena entered cautiously, unsure if she had done something wrong. But instead, he smiled and gestured for her to sit. "Lena, I wanted to talk about your future here," he said. "After the way you've led the last project, I think it's time you consider a bigger role. We'd like you to mentor a few of the younger teams and oversee upcoming projects directly. You'll have more responsibility, more input, and the chance to shape the company's direction in your area." Lena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the offer. It was an incredible opportunity, but it also meant more work, more expectations, and more scrutiny. She had faced enough judgment to know that more visibility could come with more challenges. Still, she looked at her boss and said firmly, "I'm ready. I'll do my best," he nodded. "I know you will. That's why I'm confident in you." Walking back to her desk, Lena felt a mixture of excitement and determination. She had worked hard to earn this, and she wasn't about to waste the opportunity. She spent the rest of the day planning, meeting with her team, and making sure everything ran smoothly. Even the interns she had been mentoring looked up to her now, their admiration quiet but evident. A few days later, Lena received an unexpected call from Mr. Patel. "I heard about your promotion," he said warmly. "Congratulations. You've earned it." "Thank you," Lena replied. "I couldn't have done it without your support." "Don't discount your own efforts," he said. "You made the right choices, stayed calm, and proved yourself. People notice that, and opportunities follow. Remember that for the future," she smiled. "I won't forget." With the new responsibilities, Lena's schedule grew busier, but she found joy in the work. She trained new employees, delegated tasks wisely, and always encouraged her team. She never forgot how it felt to be overlooked or dismissed, so she made sure no one under her guidance ever felt invisible. Meanwhile, the colleagues who had once mocked her now treated her with respect. Some of them even admitted quietly that they had underestimated her. Lena accepted their apologies graciously but didn't dwell on the past. She focused on the present and the future. One afternoon, as she was reviewing plans for an upcoming event, she received an email from a well-known company in another city. They had heard about her work from the client. She had impressed weeks ago and wanted to offer her a position, a leadership role that would let her manage bigger projects and larger teams. Lena sat quietly for a moment, processing the email. It was tempting. A new challenge, a new city, a chance to step even further into the career she had dreamed of. Yet she also felt a deep sense of loyalty to the company that had given her her first big opportunity. She thought about the call she had made months ago, how it had changed everything, and how her actions had led to respect and recognition. After considering carefully, she decided to accept the new offer. Not because she wanted to leave, but because she realized she could continue to grow and make an impact in ways she hadn't imagined before. Before sending her acceptance, she drafted a message to her boss. "Thank you for believing in me and giving me opportunities to grow. I've learned so much here, and I will carry these lessons with me wherever I go." A few hours later, she received a reply. "We are proud of you, Lena. Go confidently. This is your next step, and you deserve every bit of it." The following week, she prepared for her transition. She worked closely with her team to ensure a smooth handover, leaving detailed notes, guidelines, and instructions. She encouraged them, thanked them, and reminded them that their work mattered. She wanted them to feel empowered, just as she had learned to feel. On her last day at the office, Lena walked through the building one final time. She passed the conference room where she had been humiliated, the spot where she had taken that decisive call, and the desks of colleagues who had once doubted her. She paused at each place, feeling a quiet sense of closure. Her boss and a few colleagues gathered near the exit. "You've grown so much," her boss said. "Watching you lead has been inspiring. I hope your next chapter brings you even greater success." "Thank you," Lena said, smiling. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance and support." Even Dan approached her one last time. "Good luck," he said sincerely. "You've taught me a lot, more than you realize." "Thank you," Lena replied. She didn't feel anger or resentment toward him anymore. She had outgrown those feelings. The world was bigger than grudges, and success didn't come from holding on to bitterness. As she stepped out of the building, Lena felt a rush of freedom and possibility. The city streets were alive with people rushing home, cars honking, and streetlights glowing softly. She took a deep breath, feeling the cool evening air fill her lungs. It was a new beginning. She thought back to the moment she had been humiliated in front of everyone. How small and powerless she had felt. How a single call made in courage and clarity had shifted everything. It had changed the way others saw her, yes, but more importantly, it had changed the way she saw herself. The lessons she carried with her were simple, but profound. Respect couldn't be demanded. Power didn't come from anger or loud words. True strength came from patience, courage, and unwavering confidence in your own abilities. And sometimes the smallest action and a single call, a simple decision could alter the course of your life. That night, as Lena arrived at her new apartment in the city where she would begin her next role, she unpacked her bag and sat by the window. The lights of the city twinkled like stars, and she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She sent a quick message to Mr. Patel. "I made it. Thank you for believing in me." Almost immediately, his reply came, "You did this yourself." "Never forget that," Lena smiled. He was right. She had done this. Every choice, every moment of patience, every ounce of dedication had brought her here. And now the future stretched out before her like an open road full of possibilities. The next morning she reported to her new office. The building was taller, the teams larger, and the projects more complex. But Lena didn't feel intimidated. She felt prepared. She felt capable. She felt ready. She introduced herself to her new colleagues, observed their workflows, and quickly began making meaningful contributions. People noticed her calm efficiency, her clear communication, and her willingness to guide and support others. She didn't just lead, she inspired. A few weeks later, during a major project review, the client turned to her and said, "I've never worked with someone who balances skill and patience so well." "You're exceptional," Lena simply nodded. Inside, she felt a quiet satisfaction. Recognition was nice, but what mattered most was the ability to do her best work and help others succeed. That evening, as she walked home, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the laughter, the humiliation, and the fear she had felt in her first big meeting. She remembered the call she had made, the mentor who believed in her, and the choices that had shaped her path. She realized something important. Life doesn't always hand you respect or opportunity. Sometimes you have to claim it quietly, confidently, and with integrity, and once you do, nothing can take it away. Lena smiled to herself as she reached her apartment. The lights of the city flickered like tiny reminders of all the people, moments, and opportunities that had led her here. She felt gratitude, strength, and hope all at once. She knew her journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more doubts, more people who might try to underestimate her, but she also knew she had learned the greatest lesson of all, that the power to change her life had always been within her. As she set her cup of tea on the table and looked out at the city, she whispered quietly, almost to herself, "This is only the beginning," and she meant it. Lena had turned humiliation into triumph, doubt into confidence, and silence into action. She had proven, first to herself and then to the world, that courage and integrity could create opportunities where none seemed to exist. And as she closed her eyes that night, she knew that whatever came next, she would face it with the same quiet strength that had carried her this far. Her story was no longer about being disrespected. It was about rising above it, about taking control, about believing in herself when no one else did. And that belief would carry her further than she had ever dreamed.